The God of the heavens, the ancient of days, the God of our fathers, and God of my praise, the Alpha Omega, beginning and end, forever and ever. Your kingdom will stand. We come to bow before you now. We come to lay our lives down. We will have no other gods before you. Nothing on earth will compete for your throne. You are the sovereign I am, and you reign in our hearts alone. We will exalt you on high forever, King of all kings and the Lord of all lords. We will have no other gods before you. Our Maker, Creator, before time began, Messiah and Savior, Redeemer and friend, our rock of salvation, so faithful and true. We give all the glory and honor to you, for you alone are worthy of our never-ending love. We will have no other gods before you. Nothing on earth will compete for your throne. You are the sovereign I am, and you reign in our hearts alone. We will exalt you on high forever, King of all kings and the Lord of all lords. We will have no other gods before you. We will have no other gods before you. Nothing on earth will compete for your throne. You are the sovereign I am, and you reign in our hearts alone. We will exalt you on high forever, King of all kings and the Lord of all lords. We will have no other gods before you. Amen. Be seated.
New York City, that's a long way. I don't know if the 55 will make it that far. That's right. About 4 years ago, I stopped at Mrs. Winters and saw this young fellow sitting at a table by himself.
He's blind, has cerebral palsy, was born premature. His mom was killed in an accident. His dad didn't want him. His grandmother, Pearl, has raised him.
570, you need honey or jelly or hot sauce? Hot chicken. Okay, smashed potatoes, no gravy.
She works hard to make ends meet.
What you doing?
I couldn't get that off my mind for several weeks, came home, told Brenda about this little boy I met. And
He is something special.
Yeah.
This living miracle, HK.
Here we go, Titan. There we go.
He sure is.
Who is it? Hey, hello. Who is it? Who is it?
hey, pal. Hey, what's up? He's a neat little person, probably the most outstanding, dynamic personality of any person I've ever met. Come over here, man. I hadn't seen you in how long? Have you missed me?
Yes.
He's just always thrilled to see us, and we just love him.
Jim and Brenda Bradford have grown daughters and a full life, but they decided to make room for HK and Pearl in theirs. And they've given HK something he didn't have. More of a childhood, more of a chance.
I get to the normal things that boys get to do normally. A happy boy, yeah, because I'm a good kid. I'm a good teenager.
HK is a good teenager, and he now has a positive male role model in his life.
All right.
Sometimes the greatest of life's celebrations come to us from unknown directions. Janet Carroll Richardson, Channel 4 News.
So who does Vanderbilt play next week?
Florida, well, Louisville, one day next week.
Here or there?
Think here.
Okay, what about Florida?
They play them in Florida.
Oh.
Well, most people find it hard to remember where they put their car keys, glasses, or even what they had for dinner last night.
Well, what if you could remember everything that ever happened to you? Well, it is true. It's called hyperthymesia, and doctors say only 2 cases have been reported in the world. One of them is right here in the Mid-State. Tonight, News Channel 5's Kim Gebbia shares with us a boy's extraordinary gift and a survival story to boot.
As time passes, it can be hard to remember what happened last week, what happened last year, or recall even a faint memory from 10 years ago.
I'm finished, so I'm gonna spell check it.
But inside the Tennessee School for the Blind, a 21-year-old student who appears disabled and mentally challenged quietly listens, quietly stores an extraordinary gift.
My earliest memory is the first day I ever come to the school on Tuesday, September the 7th of 1993.
That was when HK Derryberry was just 3 years old, and he could remember more than just the date.
It was like 85 degrees that day.
Even how he felt on that first day of school.
Which I felt really good that day. I was really, really excited.
Now a senior at TSB, he can recall every single detail of his life since.
So if I give you a random day, you could tell me what you were doing on that day?
Yes.
So we quizzed HK's memory, randomly asking him about the first Saturday of July, 2009.
First Saturday in July of 2009, I went to Mr. Bradford, we got ready, went to a picnic at the Huddleston's house.
Like a Rolodex, he walked us through each memory, even what he had for lunch.
It was barbecue.
But surprised us when he revealed what unfolded later that day.
Shocking news from downtown Nashville today.
Between 4 and 5, somebody came out of the house and told me that Steve McNair had been shot.
McNair was discovered dead along with a 20-year-old woman.
Sure enough, it was the day Steve McNair was murdered in his Nashville apartment. But was this just a lucky guess? We asked about Saturday, October 4th, 2008.
It was a history-making night on West End.
HK says he watched the Vanderbilt football game.
They beat Auburn on Saturday, October 4th of 2008.
And this win was a history maker.
To make Vandy 5-0. They beat Auburn 14-13 that day.
13-14, baby. Awesome game.
He was right again. HK's doctor at Vanderbilt Medical Center says it's not luck, but a very rare gift.
Primarily, he's extremely interesting, and there's only been 1 or 2 cases in the world reported about people who have this, what's termed hyperthymesia, which is the ability to remember anything that's ever happened to him.
A miracle child with a memory that could help others.
There was a purpose for me. God only knows what the purpose was.
HK says when he does realize his life purpose, luckily, it's something he'll never forget.
Two more. One more.
Okay, you ready? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am HK Derryberry. This is my good friend and mentor, Mr. Jim Bradford.
Good morning.
We are both proud members of Harperfield's Church of Christ in Brentwood. So we are very honored to be invited to share our story with you this morning. We hope our presentation will be highly inspirational. I realize the importance of starting your church service on time, but I was afraid we were gonna be late getting here this morning. Traffic on I-40 East from Nashville was bumper to bumper, and I was driving as fast as I could to get here. We finally made it. The problem is I couldn't find a parking place, so I don't know where I parked. So when you leave church this morning, if any of you see a white SUV with Williamson County license plates, please let me know. That just might be my vehicle. You may not realize by looking at me, I have some disabilities. I am blind and I have cerebral palsy, so I can't do all the things that you, your children, maybe even grandchildren can do. It don't keep me from wanting to do those things. I even dream of doing those things that people have told me all my life I can never do with my disabilities. Like many of you, I love sports. I've always wanted to play sports. I figure with my disabilities, I will never have the opportunity. But just in case the opportunity ever presents itself, like one of your deacons, Brad Brown, I've always tried to stay in great tip-top physical condition. For the past 10 years, every morning my Brad Brown exercise routine includes: I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. Try to be real quiet, not to wake my grandmother up. Then I put on my walking shoes and my Marcus Mariota Tennessee Titans sports attire. Then I work up a big sweat by walking around the block three times as fast as I can. Then I stop. I take a couple of deep breaths to relax. Then I bend over. I pick up the block. Whenever they quit. Okay. Then I put the block back in the closet. Then I climb back in bed, sleep to 10. My favorite sport has always been football. I've always wanted to play football, but I figure with my disabilities, I would never have the opportunity. However, a couple years ago, after the University of Alabama Crimson Tide beat the Tennessee Volunteers for the 11th consecutive year in football, I overheard a disgruntled Tennessee football fan say, "Our quarterback must be blind." He couldn't complete a single pass. Well, folks, when I heard that is the most exciting news I'd ever heard. Okay, whenever that. Because I thought, if Tennessee's quarterback is blind, I'm blind, I can play quarterback on my high school football team. So, when I started 10th grade, I immediately jogged to the high school football coach's office as fast as I could. I said, "Coach, I want to try out for quarterback." Coach took one look at me, said, "HK, thanks for trying out. You are a brave young man, but you're not fast enough, you don't weigh enough, and you are not tall enough. So as you would expect, I didn't make the team." I didn't give up though. I was once told, your attitude determines your altitude in life. So like all you members here at Collegeside Church, I never give up. I like to soar like an eagle chasing a Tennessee Tech Golden Eagle. Then I thought to myself, I said, "HK, let's think of something that would be easy for most you folks to do here today, but would be very challenging for a blind boy to do." Then I remembered I have been riding in my grandmother's vehicle for 27 and a half years now. She makes driving seem really easy. When I heard that Brad Brown's wife, Laura Brown, drives 50 in a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone while drinking Starbucks coffee and sending text messages to Brad at the same time, I thought, since I don't drink coffee and I don't text, driving must be really easy. So I immediately enrolled in driver's education. The instructor took one look at me, said, "HK, thanks for enrolling in this course. You are a brave young man, but you need a learner's permit for completion of this course. Come back when you can get one." Folks, as you can imagine, I hadn't been back, and I won't be going back until they can invent a car that can safely drive itself. Folks, I realize we're in Collegeside Church today. You expect your ministers and your speakers to always be honest and tell the truth. Well, I must apologize to you today. What I just told you was not the truth. It's a joke. With my disabilities, I cannot play football or drive a car. Where I went to school, all of us boys are blind, so we don't have a football team, much less offer driver's education. If they offer driver's ed, they'd lose all their federal funding. Plus, the accident rate in Tennessee would be a lot higher. As Romans 12:6 says, God has given each of us the ability to do certain things well. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. In sports, the small schools like Tennessee Tech, if they have to play a major school like University of Tennessee or Kentucky in basketball, they are considered the underdog, which means they're not expected to win. Well, in life, I have always been considered the underdog. People tell me things I can't do without complimenting me for things that I can. When I was born, due to the accident that took my mother's life, doctors told my grandmother I probably wouldn't live long. Well, July 8th of this past year, I just turned 27 years old, and I am still kicking. Doctors also told my grandmother I would probably be confined to a wheelchair. Well, I walked in here today, no need for a wheelchair. In school,
teachers told my grandmother and I that I wasn't smart enough nor capable to handle a regular class load. So they were saying I wouldn't graduate high school. Well, June 1st, 2012, this little underdog pulled a major upset. I completed all the courses required of me by the state of Tennessee in order to receive a regular academic high school diploma, and I passed them all, including algebra, which was especially a challenge for a blind boy who reads and writes braille with only the use of one hand. What I'm sharing with you folks today is, with God in your life, anything is possible. If you work hard, determine what your capabilities are, maintain positive attitude, you can accomplish most anything in life within your capabilities. The only disability any of us have in life is a negative attitude. So I encourage all of you to always be positive. If you are ever down, depressed, just think things can't get any worse. Just pick up the phone, call toll-free 20 HK Derryberry in Nashville. I will give you a no-charge, 100% money-back guaranteed Collegeside Church of Christ pep talk. Before I was 9 years old, my grandmother and I did not have much of a church life. We didn't have kids in my neighborhood that would play with me. Kids in my neighborhood looked at me like I was different. They were afraid of me. So when I wasn't in school, a lot of the time I was at home from the time I got up in the morning till I went to bed at night, which that can be fun some days, but also that can get to be very lonely, especially for a blind boy who is not mobile without assistance. But all that changed when I turned 9 years old. I met my good friend and mentor, Mr. Jim Bradford. He quickly changed my life. He let me do things normal boys my age get to do that I had never gotten to do. He became a father figure to me, which I had never really had, because my father abandoned me at age 5 for 10 years. Mr. Bradford let me borrow his eyes. What I mean by that is, seeing as how I can't see, he painted word pictures for me so I could visualize things he was seeing. He told me he loved me. He told me he's proud of me. He's proud to introduce me to his friends. He told me I would be a success in life. He and his wife Brenda even buy me clothes so I look like other young men my age. Yet, 18.5 years later, Mr. Bradford still lets me borrow his eyes and he never charges me any rent for them.
I know this is not the way you want to hear my portion of the presentation, but I think we're going to run just a little over your normal time for service. But I talked to one of the elders when I first came in. He said, we're used to long-winded preachers, so I should be in good shape. But 18 and a half years ago on October 16th, it was the first cold morning we had in Middle Tennessee. And it was a Saturday morning. I was 56 years old at the time. Both my daughters were grown and out of college and out of the house. And we were empty nesters. And I certainly wasn't looking to bring another child into our life. Sometimes God works in strange ways. And that morning, it was a Saturday morning, and I was playing tennis indoors, something I had done for about 25 years with the same group of men. And we met at McDonald's in Green Hills, which is a suburb of Nashville, every Saturday morning in the winter about 7 o'clock. And we'd have breakfast and talk about family matters, business things, just other things in general. Then we'd go to an indoor tennis facility, and we'd play from 8:30 till 10 o'clock. Normally, after we finished, we would hang around the tennis courts cooling down, drinking water and Gatorade for the next 30 minutes, just chatting. But that morning, for some reason, all I could think about as I played tennis was another cup of coffee. And I usually, at that time in my life, I only drank 1 cup a day, and I'd already had one at McDonald's. But for some reason, all I could think about was going to Starbucks in Brentwood and getting a cup of coffee. And when we finished the match, as soon as we finished, the other guys grabbed their water and Gatorade. I told them bye and left. And I drove to Brentwood, where I live. And when I came to the intersection of Franklin Road and Old Hickory Boulevard, I had a very minor decision to make, because if I turn right and drive exactly 1 mile, something I'd done many times in the past, I'm at Starbucks. I look to the left, and there's a red and white sign in the air that says Mrs. Winter's Chicken and Biscuits. I turned left instead of right and drove 8/10 of a mile into a little parking lot that had as many potholes as our state highways do today after the snow and ice. And I went into this little building, a chicken restaurant, to buy my coffee. And the only positive I saw when I went in was there was a sign over the coffee urns that said, "We serve Maxwell House coffee." I grew up living with my grandparents in North Alabama in a rural area, and they always drank Maxwell House coffee. And so I figured you can't get any better than that. When I walked in, I noticed there was nobody in the dining area that I noticed in the restaurant, so I assumed it was about 10:45 in the morning. I assumed it was the transition between breakfast and lunch. I ordered my coffee, fixed it like most of us. I put a Splenda, 2 creamers, tasted it, wasn't quite perfect. I'd put another Splenda. It was just right. Put the top on it, and as I turned to leave for the first time, I observed a little boy sitting at a table by himself, listening to a little black plastic boombox radio that must have been dropped and broken a couple of times because he had 3 strips of silver duct tape holding the batteries in. But what I observed about the little boy, in addition to needing a haircut, wearing a white t-shirt with food stains on it, and some shorts that were probably too tight on him, but it was a cold morning, I noticed he had plastic white braces on both legs, and I assumed that something was wrong with him. And I don't know, I guess I've always been very inquisitive, but I turned to the lady behind the counter, behind the coffee urns. I said, "Pardon me," and she had a name badge on, said Helen. I said, "Helen, pardon me, who's the little boy?" She said, "That's HK. Who's he?" "He's our sweetheart." I said, "Well, what's he doing here?" She said, "Well, the lady who sold you the coffee, her name is Pearl. She can't afford a babysitter, so he comes and sits on weekends while she works." I said, "How long does he sit?" She said, "Only from 8 till 5. Now, if you calculate that up real quick, if you guys went to Tennessee Tech, you can do that quickly. That's 18 or 19 hours that this little boy with braces on his legs has to sit while his grandmother works. I said, "You've got to be kidding." And I ticked her off big time. She said, "Well, he doesn't do it every day. He goes to school during the week." Now, let me tell you, up until that point in my life, I had never stopped and talked to a person that had a disability. If I saw somebody in a wheelchair, a person with Down syndrome, I never talked to them because I didn't know if I was supposed to. If I was supposed to, I didn't know what to say. What I tried to do was not stare at them for fear that their parents or they would catch me staring. It'd be embarrassing. So as I'm about to walk right by this little boy with white braces on his legs like I've always done for 56 years, she says sarcastically as I turn my back to her to walk away with my perfect tasting coffee in the left hand, she said, "Oh yes, he's blind." Now I don't know about you, but I know that my right eye is more emotional than my left eye. When she told me that, it touched me like I had never been touched before. And I'll never forget this, but a tear so large formed in my right eye that it didn't roll down my cheek. It fell off my eye, bounced off my warm-up jacket. And I walked right over to the table where the little boy was sitting, and I said, "Hey, buddy, what's your name?"
I'm HK. What's your name?
My name is Jim.
Nice to meet you.
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Where do you live?
I live in Brentwood.
What street?
Harpeth River Drive.
What's that off?
Old Hickory Boulevard.
What time did you get
6 o'clock.
What did you do?
I took a shower.
Then what?
Put on my tennis clothes.
Then what?
I drove to Green Hills. We'll stop right there. HK couldn't carry on a conversation. All he could ask me, "What'd you do next? What'd you do next?" I'm thinking, this is like an FBI interrogation. Craziest kid I've ever seen. But I kept answering what next for about 3 minutes, still holding my perfect cup of coffee. And finally I said, "Buddy," I said, "I have got to go. My wife Brenda has a whole list of things I've got to do today, but it sure has been nice meeting you."
Nice to meet you too. Hope to see you again soon.
Well, me too. Hope to see you again. I didn't realize I had just made an 18-and-a-half-year commitment when I said that. But you know, I got in the car, I took the perfect tasting cup of coffee, put it in the cup holder, and I never took a swallow of it because I couldn't forget the little boy with braces on his legs that had to sit 18 and 19 hours every weekend. Told Brenda when I got home, and she probably thought it was another one of my humorous stories because she had no reaction. But I thought about him all week, and the next Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, it was a little colder. And I had been raking leaves, kind of warm, and had on a couple of layers of clothing. I'm thinking, you know, maybe a cup of coffee would be good. But remember, I played tennis that morning, or had one, and I normally only drank one every day. But I went in and told Brenda I was going to get another cup of coffee, but really the truth was I was going to see if the little boy was still at the restaurant. I pulled into the parking lot, looked through the window, and sure enough, his silhouette was, he was sitting at the same table. I went in, and this time I sat down with him, and he said, "What's your name?" I said, "I'm Jim." He said, "Are you the man I met last week?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Where do you live?" And he went through those questions. It reminded me of one of my favorite movies, Groundhog Day, where Phil Connors, the weatherman's caught in a time warp in a little town in Pennsylvania, and every morning he wakes up and he relives yesterday. But he knows a little bit more today than about the people than he did the day before. Anyway, that happened, and I started going back to visit with HK. Every Saturday I'd go back. And if he was there, I'd sit down at the same little table. He always sat at the same table with his radio. And the third Saturday I went back, he said, "Where do you live?" I said, "HK. Stop right there. Let me tell you how this is going to go. I've told you that every Saturday in the winter I do basically the same thing. I get up, I take a shower, put on my tennis clothes, drive to Green Hills, play tennis, and then I do things I've got to do for either Brenda or around the house." Now you know that. I've told you for 3 consecutive weekends. So here's the deal. I'll continue to come back and be your buddy, but if you ask me those questions today or any day in the future, I'm never coming back to see you. I immediately found out how smart he was. For 18-and-a-half years, he has never asked me those questions again. So I started coming back every Saturday afternoon. If he was there, sometimes his grandmother didn't work on weekends, but he was there. If I'd go in and sit with him in 30, 40 minutes, every Saturday he was there. After maybe about 8 weeks, I noticed his grandmother, and she had no social life at all. She went home, and from the time she got home, her only friends were customers at the restaurant. So when she got home, the only person to communicate with is a little boy that's blind with cerebral palsy. And I could imagine how their conversations go. "Grammy, where you live? What time did you get up this morning?" But anyway, but I noticed that she started taking her breaks when I came to visit HK. And when she started sitting with us at a table on her break, she liked to talk, and I started listening rather than talking. What I learned was, HK, when I first saw him that day, I thought he was about 5 years old. I later learned that he was actually 9. Although he only weighed 52 pounds at the time. I found out that for teenagers, if you're here, youth, if you're here today, this is the part I want you to listen to. HK, if he had a choice, he wouldn't be blind and wouldn't have cerebral palsy. And he has those two disabilities not because of birth defects, but because of the lifestyle of his parents. His mother, Mary, was 19 years old on July the 7th of 1990. Mary, her mother was a over-the-road trucker, and I imagine she was gone a lot, and Mary never got the love and attention that she should get as a teenage girl. So in the 7th grade at age 14, Mary decides education is not important, and she drops out of school. Mary has a baby at age 15. William, the father, is 26 years old on July the 7th of 1990. William lived with his grandparents in Murray County while his mother worked in Nashville and lived in an apartment during the week. And some weeks she'd catch the Trailway bus to come back down to Columbia to visit her boys. And I imagine grandparents that had never had a son, they didn't know how to raise William. So William was with when he was a 10th grader, he got with a rowdy group of boys that were into drugs and alcohol and other petty crimes, and he felt like what they were doing was a better lifestyle than getting an education. So in 10th grade, he drops out of school, pretty well assuring himself of always having minimum wage jobs, paying jobs. So here they are in 1990, July the 7th. They've been together for 8 months. They're not married. William is working on a farm in Murray County on July 7th. It's probably be about the same thing it would be here in Cookeville. I imagine that day was about 98 degrees, high humidity. And I worked on a farm growing up too, and bales of hay, he was baling hay, and the little rectangular bales we used to do weighed between 35 and 45 pounds. And if you lift those on a trailer and then put them up in a barn loft for 10 hours, you are worn out. And I imagine he was dehydrated, he was hungry, he was thirsty. But about 2 o'clock, Mary gets up and cleans up, and she goes to pick up William at the farm. For his work that day, he's going to get $50 cash, which kind of puts him at the top of the income scale for the people at the bar that night where they're going to go and party. On her way to pick up William, she stops at a convenience store, opens the trunk, fills a cooler full of ice and beer, and goes to the farm to get him. At 5 o'clock when he gets off, I imagine when he saw the beer in the cooler, he gave her a high five, might have even hugged her and kissed her. I'm not sure. He's pretty dirty. But before they went back to the apartment for him to get cleaned up, I imagine they consumed all the beer in the cooler because it was refreshing. It was hydrating. On the way back, William is, as it normally happens, he was driving the vehicle. He was buckled in. Mary wasn't, maybe because she was pregnant, because she was, at that point, she was 6 months pregnant. Anyway, somehow he lost control of the vehicle, ran off the road and hit head on a 150-year-old oak tree. The oak tree suffered very little, lost a little bark, lost a few leaves. Car was demolished. As it happens, William was buckled in, cut his lip, bruised his sternum. Mary was thrown in the car with severe head injuries, head trauma. The paramedics arrived and they realized that she was basically brain dead, but the unborn baby was still living. So they life-flighted her body to Vanderbilt and kept her overnight. The mother appeared the next morning, and the doctor gave Rosemary, her mother, a decision to make. Now, I told you about turning right versus left, or left turning right to get my coffee. That was minor. This morning you made a minor decision. Do I wear this blouse or this shirt to church this morning? Mary's mother, Rosemary, was given a decision. Your grandson is still living. Your daughter has severe head trauma and will not survive. Once you make the decision that we're going to give you this morning, we're going to cut the equipment off. But we can deliver your grandson. We don't think he will live. If we do, if he does live, he will always have a lifetime of medical issues. And you can make the choice, or we can let him go with his mother. And she said, thank God, she said, deliver the baby. Now, HK turned 27 last July the 8th. That grandmother, Rosemary, has never seen him because she never came back. She lives 40 miles south of Nashville. He's never seen his grandmother. And when I first met him, he weighed 52 pounds. He looked like he was 5. And he would sit in my lap and hug my neck. And I was thinking all the time, the love that Rosemary missed out on by not having this little boy sitting in her lap. And so that's the way he started life. Matter of fact, after I'd been visiting with him for about 6 or 8 times, when I would leave, get up to tell him bye, get up to leave, he'd get out of his chair and grab me around the waist and cry. And his grandmother a couple of times had to leave the cash register to come calm him down. And she called me the third time that happened and said, let me tell you why it happens, Jim. Said, first off, he has no friends. The only friends we have are the customers that come at the restaurant. And a lot of the men and women stop at his table and talk with him. And they think he thinks that they're his best friend. But at some point, they probably get tired of eating chicken all the time, so they stop coming. And now that you're his buddy and you come to visit, when you tell him bye, he thinks you're not going to come back. Now, how can you not keep going back when you've been told that? Anyway, that's the sad part of the story. HK, everything else about him is positive. I mean, he's got the most positive outlook on life. I got a handicap placard after I had known him for about 2 years. One morning we were at Kroger's, and I got the handicap placard so I could park closer to the entrances so we didn't have to walk so far. I'm flipping through the glove box looking for the handicap placard. HK says,
"What are you looking for?"
"Well, I'm looking for my handicap placard."
"Oh, Mr. Bradford, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were handicapped."
I said, "I'm not, knucklehead, you are."
"Oh, I forgot."
So if you've always had a disability, you think everybody else has problems and you're normal. But anyway, we've just done so many things. Now, HK said I changed his life drastically. Well, I probably did, but he has certainly changed my life and all the friends that I have. He's just, any place we go, he is the center of attention. He's the most famous person at our church. Last year we've never advertised speaking. Last year we were invited to share this story 53 times in 11 states and the Grand Cayman Islands. Last year we spoke to over 22,000 people. And all the money he earns from speaking goes into a trust fund for his future care. I don't know how long I can do it. He said I'm going to live to be 115. But I'm 75, so I'm thinking if I can do this 5 more years, maybe we'll have enough in the trust that he can live kind of comfortably the rest of his life. But he can do this by himself also. Anyway, let me share a couple of stories with you. The memory he's got. Sir, what's your name? Chip. Skip? Chip. Chip, say it loud enough. I wear hearing aids. Give HK your birth date, including the year.
My birthday is December 28th, 1976.
December 28th, 1976.
You were born on a Tuesday.
Anything else happen on his birthday?
Well, that was...
Or is that just a dull birthday?
Was one day after Hank Snow, the country singer, died in 1999, and they were making funeral arrangements that day.
Okay. Well, anyway, HK has a gift. He has a gift of telling if you give him your birth date, including the year, he'll tell you the day of the week you were born, and then he'll tell you some other historical things. Now, after we get through today, I know y'all have Sunday school. We'll be here for a while. I'll put him back there. If y'all would like to come up and meet him, you can. I don't want to disrupt Sunday school, but if you want to find out the day of the week you were born, you can do that. But let me tell you about the memory thing. The memory has been really great because in 18 years that I've known HK, I have never forgotten our anniversary. I've never forgotten my 2 daughters' birthdays or my 2 grandchildren's birthdays because he wakes up every morning and tells me what the anniversaries are for that day and that week. And I spend about $25 a month on birthday cards because he'll say, "Oh, Mr. Bradford, we got to get Gene Stallings. You know Coach Stallings from Alabama? His birthday is Saturday. We've got to mail him." Matter of fact, today, how many of you are UT fans? You probably remember Coach Bruce Pearl. Basketball, well, today is his birthday. He's out in San Diego. His Auburn team plays basketball tonight, but they've become good buddies. And so anytime that we want to go to a home basketball game at Auburn, we just call Bridget Garba, his administrative assistants, and we get there and we've got tickets. And so he just met with Coach a couple of weeks ago when we were down to see them play Alabama. But anyway, the memory thing can be wonderful. Because I just don't forget anything he reminds me. It can also, for some of his close friends, can be embarrassing. Let me give you 2 examples. One is we have a fast food restaurant in Nashville or in Brentwood called Backyard Burger. You go in Backyard Burger and there's a window there that you place your order. Then you go take a number, sit down. They call your number. You go back to a window, pick up your food. One night he was with us after church, and we back when we had nightly services on Sunday night, now we have small groups, so we don't do that anymore. But anyway, long story short, we had HK with us that afternoon, and I didn't take him back at 5 o'clock when his grandmother got off because the Titans were playing. She called about 2 and said, I'm getting off early. Can you bring him back quickly? And I said, well, let him stay and watch the ball game, then I'll bring him home after church night. Well, we took him to Backyard Burger with us, with other adults that we were with. They normally didn't take kids. But when we got up to the counter, HK wasn't quite as tall as the counter was high. And the man behind the counter looked over and said, hey, HK, is that you?
Yeah, what's your name?
I'm Stanley.
Are you the one that worked at Miss Winters with my grandmother?
Yes, I used to work over at Mrs. Winters on Franklin Road at Mrs. Winters Chicken with your grandmother Pearl.
Are you the one that got fired for smoking marijuana?
True story. Brenda looked at me and said, did he say what I think he did? I said, he did. She said, order and let's get out of here. And he loves sports, and we've had the opportunity to meet a lot of athletes being in Nashville. And one of his favorite all-time Titans is Kevin Mawai. The young folks won't remember it, some of the adults will, but Kevin played for 17 seasons in the NFL. He was a center. He was an All-American at LSU. He was a first-round draft pick of the Seattle Seahawks. And he was traded after about 6 years to the New York Jets, and then the last 4 years of his career, he was traded to the Titans, and he moved to Brentwood. And he lived actually in Williamson County, not too far from us, but he lived on a farm right next to friends of ours. And so our friends had been telling Kevin about HK. So one Saturday morning in 2006, during the 2006 season, we got a call about 9:30 from Doug Durr, who lives in our friend that lives in the farm next door to Kevin. He said, hey, Jim, this is Doug. What are you and HK up to? I said, we're at Chick-fil-A having breakfast. He said, well, Kevin Mawai wants to meet HK. Could you bring him out to the house about 11:30? I said, yes. We go out, and walking across the pasture is Kevin Mawai. Now, if you've ever met an NFL player, they are big dudes. Kevin is 6'2", 295 pounds. Guys, zero body fat. I mean, he is huge. And here is 4'8" HK Derryberry. And they come in, and Kevin grabs his hand, and he asks him the birthday thing and hugs him. And I guess it was allergy season because Kevin keeps wiping tears from his eyes. I guess it was allergy coming across the pasture. But anyway, the football season had already started that year. They had played, you look like a football player, they had already played 6 games. And their record was 1 win, 5 losses. Here's Kevin, 295, and 67-pound HK Derryberry. They're bonding. Finally, Kevin says as he leaves, because he's got to go back and get ready to go downtown for the walk-through that afternoon at 3 o'clock, he said, HK, have you ever seen a Titans game?
I've been to a preseason game.
Well, how would you like to see a regular season game?
I would love to.
How would you like to sit in the skybox with my family?
I would love to. Oh, Kevin, are any of the games sold out?
Are any of the games? Well, sure, HK. All the Titans games are sold out.
I don't know why, because y'all are no good.
So 295-pound Kevin Mawai said, you know, HK, we are not. But I'm going to take this inspirational message back to our offensive linemen and share it with them. And anyway, long story short, the Titans wound up that season 8-8 after starting 5-1. Every time, 1-5. Every time that they would win a game, HK would tell me, he said, Mr. Bradford, do you think it was because of my pep talk to Kevin? Now, I know you've laughed a lot this morning. We've gone way over. Y'all didn't pay us for all this extra overtime that we're taking here, but we have thoroughly enjoyed being here. Let me leave you with 3 things to ponder. One is, if God is in your life, as HK has proven up to today, 27 and a half years, anything is possible. You've just got to work hard. Nothing in life is easy. I've always told if it was easy and paid a lot, everybody'd be doing it. 2 is the only disability any of us have in life is a negative attitude. And that's, just really true. He is never negative because he said, Mr. Bradford, I'll always be blind, and I'll always have cerebral palsy. I can't think of that. I have to think about the good things that I'm contributing in life and why I've been so blessed. And then the last thing I want to leave you with, in life, you're going to meet an HK. You've probably walked by many of them, just like I used to till I met HK. Now, it may not be a blind person with cerebral palsy, but he's somebody that needs a friend that's having an issue in life. Maybe there's a kid that's having problems and their parents are having problems with them. Maybe a person is having job problems or wife problems or husband problems. If you know of those people, I didn't know what to say to a little blind boy that day that I met him 18 years ago. I just said, "Hey buddy, what's your name?" We started a friendship that has been very special for both of us. And if you know a person that needs somebody in their life to be a friend, if you'll just go up and introduce yourself, you probably will wind up changing two lives, yours and theirs. God bless you. Thank you for having... Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I always forget this. If you do Facebook, go to HKDerryberry.com. He has, this morning, 8,156 people that follow him on Facebook. But go and like his fan page, and you can keep up with the adventures. We'll have something posted about our being here today next week. So thank you all so much for having us. And I know that Joe wants to come up and finish the sermon this morning. Thank y'all. Okay, give me a hand. Don't take that out. Thank you. Okay.
Is this not one of the most powerful testimonies you've ever heard in your life? Amen. Wow. This is a love story. Jim, when I think of you, I think of commitment. I think of somebody that was willing to let God lead them into the life of a young man that needed somebody, and you are a willing servant. And when I think of commitment, I'm going to think of you for the rest of my life. I have a tagline that I like to use. It's never give up. You've seen it. Well, now I got a face right here that goes with that expression, never give up. It reminds me of another story of God reaching down into our world with His Son. God never gives up. And He's reaching out in your heart right now. And we're going to sing a song of invitation. And it's a chance for you to hear another love story that's very familiar. It looks a lot like this, of God coming down into our lives and healing us, our brokenness, our woundedness, our sins. So we're going to have elders up front, elders in the back. And if you need to respond to Jesus Day, to build a relationship, to have your sins washed away in a watery grave baptism, to start new again, and to have a wonderful, wonderful, or how do you say it?
Lovely, lovely, lovely life.
A lovely life. Then come to Jesus as we sing.
We fall down, we lay our crowns at the feet of Jesus. The greatness of mercy and love at the feet of Jesus. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, early in the we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy is the
kind of embarrassing because every time I come up here, I've got notes trying to remember stuff. And I think about that young man sitting right here can remember everything. I may have to hire him to call me and remind me of my wife's anniversary. Well, it's my anniversary too, but it's okay if I forget mine. So, and HK and Jim, I don't know what would have happened if you'd gotten here on time and started on time, because about a third of these people weren't here then. Y'all gonna make me pay for that one day. So, and Brad and Laura, I can only suspect that there's a spy cam in your house. I don't know how they got all that information. Surely nobody here would have told them those stories. No, I'm sure not. And I don't know, Jim told you about where he goes to have coffee. I was just in Green Hills a couple of months ago, and they tore down that McDonald's and built a new one. So he must have worn it out from the inside, going there all the time. His friends must be kind of rough. But a couple of announcements. Master Singers today at 3 o'clock at Tech. And they're going to be singing Psalms 100. That ought to be enlightening. And all of the safety volunteers, if you've received a text message and maybe a phone call to remind you of a meeting today, but please stay in the CLC and meet with Bryant Dunaway and the rest of the safety volunteers. So you're going to have a discussion about some more safety protocols for our church. And pardon me. Joe will be at the starting point, even though I probably won't need to be. There won't be anybody there because they'll all be at the table meeting HK. But Joe will be at the starting point. That's for folks that are new and you want to know more about how to join us at Collegeside. Stop by. There's some windows down on the right. And for the rest of you, HK will be at the table signing books, selling books. And if he doesn't have enough books, he'll ship you a book. So stop by there. And for all of you teachers who won't have anybody in your classes, just go ahead and teach. And I see my old buddy, Bernie Keys here. Bernie, good to have you. It's been a while since you've wandered in here. Hope you weren't lost this morning, went to the wrong church. But since you live in Chattanooga, I doubt that was that way. So this week I'm going to ask God to help cure me of my negative attitude. I know it's hard for you to believe I have a negative attitude. I'm sure I'm human and things go that way in my life. But after seeing HK and Jim and talking about how much God has stirred their lives and cured them of a negative attitude, I think that's something I'll be looking forward to this week.
Would you please pray with me? Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Lord, thank you for hope. Thank you for talents. Thank you for spiritual talents. Thank you for those that recognize talents and they use it to share your light. I pray that all of our hearts were open this morning. We'll take the message that we learned and we heard and apply it in our day-to-day lives and just make a difference in the days to come. Help us just to be the example that you would want us to be. Please forgive us of our daily sins. We ask it all in your name. Amen.